Hello again, everyone. Edwin Leonard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about transit Mercury making a square opposition or inconjunct aspect to one's natal Uranus. Now, when we're talking about transits that involve Mercury, they can be about communications, assimilating information, mobility, siblings, cousins, neighbors, analysis. And when you're talking about the transit of Mercury basically making an adverse aspect to your natal Uranus, well, this may manifest in communications, assimilating information, mobility, siblings, cousins, neighbors, and analysis may conflict with your friendships in some cases. If you know, say if this your natal Uranus is in Sagittarius, it could be foreign friendships or people that are in that are very religious or philosophical, or maybe they have they're adventurers or travelers that go to other countries a lot. They might be in translation or publishing. The thing about this transit, though, keep in mind that it doesn't last for that long. It does last longer, of course, than the transits of the moon. The transits of the moon last about 10 hours on average. The transit of Mercury will be in days, and it's something, but it still can have certain significance. You're going to get a number of these transits to your natal Uranus every year. And anyway, back to this interpretation on this. Well, the thing about it is, it could also be where your day-to-day communications or short journeys may also conflict with clubs or groups or organizations. You might, it could be a situation where you might, have to do some errands or short journeys, and it might conflict with some club you belong to. Going, to say if your natal Uranus is in Aquarius, it might be some astrological or astronomy or computer group, as an example, that you're maybe unable to maybe attend because you have to there's some kind of communications that have to be taken care of, or there has to be some documents that have to be written or what have you, or even short journeys. Uranus is also associated with internet and computers as well, so it can be a situation where the messages on the internet, maybe they're having trouble getting transmitted to, or these it could be communications on through the internet might be a little more erratic and sporadic than they are ordinarily. And the thing about this too is keep in mind that Uranus is also associated with electronics, and could be a situation where there may be some hand issues as a result of doing some kind of electrical work, or it could work with electronics, I should say. But if you're working as an electrician, it could be a situation, any of the electronic devices that maybe you're using for communication. They might have a little bit more difficulty at this time, and maybe they're only working intermittently as opposed to more consistently. Now, Uranus is also associated with the unusual, the bizarre, and unorthodox. So this could also be a time where, maybe at this time, your communications, might be, a little bit, odd, but maybe for the worst, or you might be seeing, it could even be bizarre, type behavior from, siblings or cousins or neighbors that might shock you. It could be like a hand buzzer joke, or, the whoopee cushion thing. It could be something too where, when you look at this as well, um, it could even be, for example, something, Uranus is connected with computers. This is a thing where, again, the communications might be a little bit more sporadic with that. But again, going back to the fact that Uranus is connected with the unusual, it could be something going on when you're in your short journeys that might be something unusual, but it might not be something good or unusual. Maybe you encounter some kind of sinkhole, or it may not land in it, but I'm saying there might be a sinkhole, maybe in the distance, or something that is really not like a snake in the road, or who the heck knows, but something that could be not good and bizarre. Now, anatomically speaking, Uranus is connected with the shins, ankles, calves, nerves, circulation. So it can be a time where There might be situations where it might be harder to articulate maybe these matters if you have any problems with them at this point in time. Maybe somehow it affects you in your communications, where maybe you just don't feel like communicating as much because of these issues in some cases. It may be that, remember that Mercury is also associated with the nerves, so it can be some nerve related issue, maybe with the shins or the calves at this time. And also, too, and the thing about Uranus is it's also, again, connected with electricity. Sometimes, it might be maybe a communication device may go out due to, lack of electricity, power, the electric power going out. Be careful, be more prudent at this time if you're doing work with your hands that involves something electrical. If you're doing home wiring, for example, make sure you're taking your precautions and wearing the gloves or whatever you need to do at this time. Um, Uranus is also very erratic and sporadic energy, and I believe I stated this earlier, reiterated again. It's that communications might be a little bit more erratic or sporadic, more so than usual. It might be that maybe if you're dependent on some kind of ride for transportation, that might be a little bit erratic and sporadic. Say, especially if you have like Mercury, transit Mercury is a more dependence on like Cancer as an example, the zodiac sign Cancer. Now, Uranus is also associated with our goals and aspirations, so it'd be harder at this time to communicate and verbalize what your own aspirations and goals are. You might not just feel like thinking about them at this point in time. And Uranus is also associated with astrology, astronomy, innovation. Um, it can be a time if you're doing, like, say, you're doing some writing as an astrologer, as an example, or astronomer. It might be taking longer, maybe to get things done, or to, or maybe it's harder for you to come up with writings pertaining to this at this time, more so than usual. Uh, and the fact that Uranus is innovation, if you're an inventor or innovator, it might also be harder to try to maybe communicate or verbalize the ideas that you're trying to do at this time and trying to actually talk about. Now, another way this transit may manifest, it could be siblings, cousins, neighbors at this time, people prominent your early education, people prominent your short journeys that might conflict with your goals and your aspirations, your friendships at this time. Say, for example, if your natal Uranus is in Aquarius, it could be very ingenious or, eccentric, maybe bizarre friends in some cases. It could be ones in computer field or working in astrology or astronomy. Um, Another thing too, and it could also be that these people, siblings, cousins, and neighbors may also conflict. Maybe if you're trying to focus on a goal or aspiration, again going to the zodiac sign Aquarius, could be an astronomy or an astrology goal or aspiration. It can also be, in some cases, that local transportation issues might occur due to electrical failures, such as like the traffic lights may be going out, as an example, or something unusual, again, like a sinkhole is a very extreme example, of course. Or power line falls down, or a telephone pole falls down and it's in the road. It could be something of an odd nature, but also, too, another way this transit may be expressed, it could be news received may adversely affect your future. Say, for example, if your natal Uranus is in Sagittarius, it might be a future connected with sports or adventuring, higher education, publishing, as some examples, working in translation. Um, and it might be, and panic attacks, if you do have them, I would say especially, might be a little bit more prevalent at this time, more so than usual. And thinking may be a little bit more sporadic and erratic, and it might be harder to concentrate on one particular mental task at a time. And it might also be a little bit harder to like verbalize and articulate new ideas if you do have any at this time. It might be best to kind of jot it down or save it on the computer if you can. It might, because maybe something happens where you have an idea, you get distracted, and you don't there's no recollection, you don't retain that information. Hold on a moment. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, now in some cases, again, or at least somewhat reiterating what I said previously, there could be a greater propensity for an electric shock if you're doing work that involves the hands. Remember, Mercury is associated with the hands. Uranus is associated with electricity. And there may be some nerve-related issues, especially if you already have them. They may be more prominent and in the ankles, perhaps the shins, the calves, the lower legs, and the thing is, this is just really that is pretty much it. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Leonard saying stay well.